Perfection is one of the greatest myths we have been sold, and yet it is also one of the heaviest burdens we carry. Everywhere we turn, society tells us that we must strive for the flawless version of ourselves, whether it is in our careers, our bodies, or our relationships. We compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reels and wonder why we don't measure up. This constant chase for perfection leaves us exhausted, anxious, and often disconnected from who we truly are. The truth is that perfection is unattainable, and trying to live by it robs us of real growth. Growth does not happen in the pursuit of something that doesn't exist. It happens in the small, imperfect choices we make each day when we dare to step forward, even though we are not fully ready. It happens when we try, fail, and learn again, instead of waiting until everything is polished and certain. Perfection asks us to delay our lives until we become something flawless, but life itself is built in the messy and unpredictable moments. Real growth asks us to show up imperfectly and do the work that is in front of us. In this space, we discover progress, not perfection. Perfection is an illusion because it convinces us that if we just work harder, if we just get everything right, then we will finally be enough. But the reality is that enoughness cannot be earned through achievement or flawlessness. It must be embraced as a truth that already exists within us. When we chase perfection, we end up running in circles, always striving but never arriving. That is why imperfection is so important. It breaks the cycle of performance and allows us to accept ourselves as we are. Only then can we build the resilience and courage needed for genuine growth. The danger of perfection is that it silences us. It keeps us from speaking up because we fear being judged for not having the perfect words. It keeps us from creating because we believe our work must be flawless before it is worthy of being seen. It keeps us from loving fully because we are terrified that our flaws will make us unworthy of love. And yet, when we let go of this illusion, something beautiful happens. We begin to realize that the cracks in our lives are not evidence of failure, but openings for connection and understanding. Think about the most meaningful moments in your life. They probably weren't the ones where everything went exactly according to plan. They were the moments when you faced struggle, when you admitted a mistake, when you took a risk without certainty of success. Those were the times that stretched you, shaped you, and grew you into a stronger version of yourself. Perfection would have robbed you of those lessons because perfection is about avoiding failure, while growth is about learning from it. Imperfection is not the enemy, it is the path to transformation. When we shift our perspective and see perfection for what it is, an illusion, we also free ourselves from comparison. We stop measuring our lives against someone else's standard of flawlessness. We stop believing that we must look a certain way, achieve a certain status, or follow a certain path to be valuable. In imperfection, we find authenticity, and in authenticity, we find belonging. People don't connect with perfect, they connect with real. That connection becomes the soil where growth takes root, nourished by honesty and courage instead of fear and pretense. The truth is that perfection has never inspired anyone. No one is moved by a flawless performance as much as they are by the story of someone who fell, got back up, and kept going. Perfection isolates, but imperfection inspires. When we stop worshiping perfection, we stop trying to protect an image and start living a life. That is where growth truly begins, in the messy, imperfect, beautiful reality of being human. By letting go of the illusion of perfection, we finally create the space to become who we are meant to be. Authenticity is not about being perfect. It is about being real. When we embrace imperfection, we are giving ourselves permission to show up as we truly are, without masks and without pretenses. Perfection demands that we hide the messy parts of our lives, the doubts and the fears, but authenticity invites us to bring them into the light. When people see us being real, they don't see weakness, they see courage. That is why imperfection is the foundation of authenticity And authenticity is the foundation of a meaningful life. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act in spite of it. When we reveal our imperfections, we step into that space of courage because we risk judgment, rejection, or failure. Yet, it is in that space that true confidence grows, not the shallow confidence built on pretending to have everything together. Authenticity means saying, "This is who I am, flaws and all, and I am still worthy of love and belonging." That declaration is far more powerful than any illusion of perfection could ever be. When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, we also allow others to do the same. Authenticity is contagious. It creates a safe environment where people feel they don't have to perform or pretend to be accepted. A leader who admits mistakes gains trust rather than losing it because their honesty proves they are human. A friend who shares their struggles invites deeper connection because vulnerability opens the door to compassion. Imperfection, therefore, does not diminish our influence. It strengthens it by grounding it in truth. So often, we believe that we need to hide our imperfections in order to be loved or respected. We put on masks to show the world only what we think is acceptable. But the reality is that people are not drawn to perfection. They are drawn to relatability. No one connects with an image of someone who never struggles, never fails, and never doubts. Connection comes when someone says, "I see myself in your story. I understand your struggle." Authenticity becomes the bridge between hearts, and imperfection is the material it is built from. Imperfection also invites freedom. When you stop trying to live up to an impossible standard, you free yourself from constant comparison and endless self-criticism. Authenticity allows you to celebrate progress instead of punishing yourself for not being flawless. You begin to honor the truth that growth is messy, success is nonlinear, and life is not meant to be lived like a perfect performance. In that freedom, you find the energy to create, to take risks, and to pursue dreams without the heavy burden of perfection holding you back. The courage born from authenticity is what allows us to rise after we fall. When we admit that we don't have it all figured out, we give ourselves room to learn and adapt. Perfection closes the door to learning because it convinces us we must already have the answers. Authenticity keeps us open to feedback, growth, and transformation. In this way, imperfection becomes not just something to accept, but something to celebrate because it continually pushes us to evolve. Authenticity does not mean broadcasting every flaw or mistake, but it does mean living in alignment with our truth. It is about knowing that we don't have to perform for approval or shape ourselves into someone else's standard of perfect. It is about daring to stand as we are with our strengths and weaknesses and trusting that we are enough. By embracing imperfection, we embrace authenticity. And when we live authentically, we live courageously, and that is the soil where true growth takes root. Mistakes are not signs of failure. They are teachers that shape us into stronger and wiser versions of ourselves. Every time we stumble, we are given a chance to reflect on what went wrong and discover how to rise again. If we only lived inside the boundaries of perfection, we would never learn resilience, creativity, or adaptability. Growth is not built in flawless execution. It is built in the moments where we face discomfort and choose to move forward anyway. Each mistake carries within it the seed of transformation. When we look back on the turning points of our lives, they are rarely moments of ease or success. More often, they are times when something broke down, when we faced rejection, or when we made a decision that didn't turn out as planned. In those painful moments, we are forced to grow beyond what we thought we were capable of. Mistakes reveal truths about our strengths, our values, and the depth of our perseverance. Without them, we would remain untested and unchanged, stuck in the illusion of safety. The fear of making mistakes keeps many people from ever stepping into their full potential. Perfection whispers that unless everything is guaranteed to succeed, we shouldn't even try. But that mindset traps us in stagnation. robbing us of the chance to learn, to expand, and to build resilience. The willingness to make mistakes is the same willingness that fuels growth. It is not about being reckless, but about being brave enough to risk imperfection in pursuit of something meaningful. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of the process of achieving it. Every person who has accomplished something extraordinary has a trail of mistakes behind them. Those missteps were not wasted. They were essential stepping stones that sharpened focus and built strength. Mistakes teach us what doesn't work so we can find what does. They humble us enough to listen, to adapt, and to try again with greater wisdom than before. Growth without mistakes is simply impossible. Mistakes also deepen our empathy. When we have fallen short, we are less likely to judge others for their shortcomings. We begin to see the humanity in others because we recognize it in ourselves. This empathy creates stronger relationships, healthier teams, and deeper connections. Instead of pretending to be perfect, we embrace the truth that everyone is learning and growing. In that honesty, we find belonging because we are no longer competing for flawlessness, but supporting one another in the journey. When we make mistakes and still choose to rise, we begin to rewrite the story of what it means to be strong. Strength is not about never falling. It is about falling and finding the courage to stand back up. Mistakes give us that opportunity again and again. They remind us that life is not about maintaining an image of control, but about building resilience through experience. The more we allow mistakes to shape us, the more capable we become of facing challenges without fear. Mistakes are proof that we are in motion, that we are daring to try instead of staying frozen in the comfort of inaction. Each error becomes a mark of courage, a reminder that we were bold enough to step forward into the unknown. Instead of fearing them, we can begin to see mistakes as invitations to grow, to adapt, and to become more than we were yesterday. Growth comes not from avoiding mistakes, but from embracing them as essential teachers on the path of becoming who we are meant to be. Vulnerability is often seen as weakness, but in reality, it is the birthplace of true connection. When we allow ourselves to be seen as we really are, we invite others to step closer. Pretending to be perfect builds walls, but showing our struggles builds bridges. People connect not to the image of flawless lives, but to the authenticity of shared humanity. Vulnerability opens the door for compassion, understanding, and love to grow. Connection requires honesty, and honesty requires courage. To share our imperfections means risking judgment, but it also creates the possibility of being understood on a deeper level. When we hide behind perfection, our relationships remain shallow because they are based on an image, not on truth. Vulnerability removes the mask and lets others know they are not alone in their fears or failures. It is in those moments of honesty that relationships become unshakable. When we dare to be vulnerable, we also give others permission to do the same. This mutual courage creates an environment where shame loses its power and authenticity takes root. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are they are the ones who are unafraid to share both their strengths and their struggles. Their vulnerability does not lessen your respect for them, it increases it. That is the paradox of vulnerability. It feels risky, yet it deepens trust. Many people fear vulnerability because they associate it with exposure, with showing weakness. But the truth is that vulnerability is strength in its purest form. It takes courage to admit when you are struggling, to ask for help, or to reveal emotions that you would rather keep hidden. Perfection hides behind a mask of control, while vulnerability says, I am human, and that is enough. This honesty is what creates meaningful bonds between people. Relationships thrive not in the absence of flaws, but in the presence of openness. A friendship where both people feel safe to share their struggles will always be deeper than one where only surface level perfection is displayed. Love that is built on vulnerability is love that endures because it is rooted in acceptance rather than performance. Families, teams, And communities grow stronger when members feel they can bring their whole selves to the table. Vulnerability fuels connection because it reveals truth. Vulnerability also transforms leadership. Leaders who pretend to be perfect create fear among their teams because no one feels safe to make mistakes. Leaders who are vulnerable, who admit when they don't have all the answers, create a culture of trust and collaboration. Their openness encourages innovation because people are no longer afraid of failing. Vulnerability becomes the foundation of growth, not only for individuals, but also for groups and organizations. In a world that constantly pressures us to perform, to appear polished, and to hide our flaws, choosing vulnerability is revolutionary. It says that we no longer need to measure our worth by perfection, but by courage and authenticity. Through vulnerability, we step out of isolation and into connection. Through connection, we find belonging. And in belonging, we discover the strength and growth that only comes from living with an open heart. Imperfection is often where creativity is born because it forces us to think beyond the expected. When everything goes exactly as planned, there is no need to adapt, innovate, or imagine a new way forward. But when things fall apart, when mistakes appear, or when cracks show up in our plans, we are pushed to look at life differently. Creativity is not about getting everything right. It is about exploring possibilities when certainty disappears. Imperfection becomes the soil where new ideas take root. The world's greatest inventions and breakthroughs were not born from flawless execution. They came from trial and error, from countless mistakes, and from the willingness to learn through failure. Every time something didn't work, it created an opportunity to find something that did. Innovation thrives not in the pursuit of perfection, but in the courage to experiment. Imperfection is not the obstacle to creativity, it is the invitation to it. When we embrace imperfection, we release the fear of being wrong. And that freedom is where imagination flourishes. Perfection stifles creativity because it insists on one right way, one flawless result, one ideal image. Imperfection, however, opens countless doors because it asks, what if and why not? It gives us permission to try, to explore, to see failure not as an end, but as a part of the process. Creativity blossoms when we stop demanding perfection and start welcoming possibility. Imperfection also teaches us to approach problems with curiosity instead of judgment. When something doesn't work out, we can either shame ourselves for failing or we can ask what new opportunities it might reveal. That curiosity is the heartbeat of creativity. Instead of being paralyzed by mistakes, we become explorers of new paths. Imperfection encourages us to play, to take risks, and to discover beauty in places we never thought to look. Creativity itself is imperfect by nature. Art, music, writing, design, and innovation are all filled with revisions, edits, and unfinished drafts. No masterpiece has ever been created in a single flawless attempt. What makes creative work powerful is not its perfection, but its authenticity and expression. The cracks and flaws in creative work often make it more meaningful because they carry the fingerprints of the journey. Imperfection doesn't diminish creativity, it makes it human. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we also give ourselves permission to create without fear of judgment. So many people never write the book, paint the picture, or start the business because they are waiting until it can be perfect. But creativity doesn't thrive in waiting. It thrives in doing, in experimenting, in making mistakes along the way. Imperfection fuels momentum, while perfection keeps us stuck in hesitation. By embracing imperfection, we unlock the freedom to create. The truth is that imperfection is where life becomes interesting. A cracked vase lets light through, a wrong note can spark a new melody, and a mistake in a plan can open the door to something far greater than we imagined. Creativity lives in those cracks, in the willingness to see beauty where others see flaws. When we embrace imperfection as part of the process, we don't just grow. We innovate, we inspire, and we transform. It is through imperfection that creativity continues to shape the world. Perfection often feels like a heavy cage, confining us to one narrow version of what life should look like. It demands control, predictability, and flawlessness, leaving no room for flexibility or growth. When we live inside that cage, we spend all our energy trying to avoid mistakes instead of daring to experience life fully. Imperfection, on the other hand, releases us from that confinement and allows us to explore possibilities we never imagined. Where perfection restricts, imperfection expands. The pressure to be perfect keeps us trapped in fear. We hesitate to take risks, to try new things, or to step into the unknown because we are terrified of failing. But growth never happens in the comfort zone of safety and predictability. It happens when we are brave enough to move forward without guarantees. Imperfection gives us the freedom to fail, to learn, and to try again, while perfection keeps us frozen in hesitation. When we accept imperfection, we also accept that life is not meant to be a straight line. Success, healing relationships, and dreams are all built through ups and downs, mistakes and recoveries, losses and gains. Perfection would have us believe there is only one correct path, but imperfection reminds us that detours can lead to discoveries. What feels like a setback today may become the breakthrough tomorrow. Imperfection expands the map of our lives. Perfection blocks potential because it creates fear of criticism and rejection. We silence our ideas, bury our passions, and hide our creativity because we think they are not flawless enough to be seen. But imperfection encourages us to share anyway, to take the leap even when we feel unprepared. It invites us to risk being misunderstood in the hope of being authentic. That risk is where true potential is unleashed because it allows us to live boldly instead of cautiously. Imperfection also allows us to celebrate progress instead of demanding flawless outcomes. Each small step forward becomes valuable, not because it is perfect, but because it represents growth. When perfection is the goal, nothing is ever enough, and success feels hollow. But when imperfection is embraced, we see value in effort, resilience, and persistence. Growth becomes a journey to be lived instead of a finish line to be crossed. The space that imperfection creates is also where connection and collaboration thrive. Perfection isolates us, making us feel we must do everything alone to maintain an image of control. Imperfection invites us to lean on others, to ask for help, and to grow together. In that collaboration, ideas expand, possibilities multiply, and relationships deepen. What perfection shrinks into loneliness, imperfection grows into community. When we stop chasing flawless living, we start embracing real living. Imperfection gives us permission to take risks, to dream bigger, and to accept that the beauty of life is not in its polish, but in its authenticity. It teaches us that mistakes do not limit us, but expand us, that struggles do not shrink us, but strengthen us. By choosing imperfection, we choose possibility. By choosing possibility, we create lives filled not with pressure, but with purpose and growth. Growth is not born from the polished image of perfection, but from the raw courage of taking imperfect steps forward. We often believe that if we just wait until everything is perfect, then we will finally have the confidence to act. But waiting for perfection only delays progress because perfection is an illusion that never arrives. Courage, on the other hand, is a choice we make in the present moment. It says, I may not be ready, but I will try anyway. Polish is about appearances, about how others perceive us, but courage is about substance. Courage asks us to step into arenas where there are no guarantees of success and no certainty of approval. While polish might impress people, it rarely inspires them because it hides the vulnerability of struggle. Courage, however, inspires deeply because it shows humanity and resilience. Growth demands courage because it is in those moments of risk that we stretch beyond our limits. Perfection convinces us that we need to have the right answers, the right timing, and the right skills before we begin. It whispers that preparation is the same as progress, but in truth, preparation without action keeps us stuck. Courage interrupts that cycle by reminding us that we do not need to have everything figured out before we start. We can learn as we go, adapt along the way, and still create something meaningful. Growth happens when we dare to move while still uncertain. Every person who has achieved greatness has one thing in common. They chose courage over polish. They took imperfect first steps, failed repeatedly, and allowed those failures to refine their journey. The stories that inspire us most are not about flawless victories, but about persistence through difficulty. Growth is never the result of avoiding mistakes, but of embracing them as part of the path. Courage is the fuel that keeps us going even when the outcome is unclear. When we demand perfection from ourselves, we often avoid opportunities that could change our lives. We don't apply for the job, share our ideas, or pursue our dreams because we think we are not polished enough yet. But life-changing opportunities rarely come when we are perfectly prepared. They come when we are willing to be vulnerable, to take the risk of showing up as we are. Courage creates movement, and movement creates growth. Courage also redefines what success looks like. Instead of measuring success by how flawless we appear, we measure it by the risks we took and the lessons we gained. Even when the outcome is not what we hoped, the act of stepping forward builds strength, confidence, and resilience. Growth is not a straight line of victories, but a collection of brave attempts that move us closer to who we are becoming. Perfection measures us by results. Courage measures us by effort. When we choose courage over polish, we also give others permission to do the same. Our willingness to take imperfect action encourages others to let go of their own fears of inadequacy. Instead of inspiring people with our flawless image, we inspire them with our authentic struggle. Growth ripples outward when we live with courage because it shows others that they too can rise without waiting to be perfect. The world does not need polished masks. It needs brave hearts willing to show up imperfectly.